night was velvet soft, wrapped in a deep indigo sky scattered with pale stars. The world seemed hushed, as though it had drawn a long breath and held it, listening. In that silence, the sound of the river threading its way through the valley carried like a lullaby, a constant murmur that had been flowing for centuries without pause. The Whispering Vale, as it was called, was a place both ordinary and magical. Meadows of tall silver grasses bowed to the faintest touch of wind, their blades shimmering under the starlight as if tipped with frost. Ancient willows leaned over the riverbanks, their long branches trailing in the water, as though they were brushing the river's shoulders with affection. Above them, night birds glided silently, their wings whispering against the cool air. It was a place made for resting, for exhaling burdens, for allowing the world to soften around the edges. And it was here, in this valley untouched by haste, that a traveler found his way on a quiet night. His name was Calen, though names mattered very little in the Vale. What was remembered instead was the feeling one carried. And Calen carried with him both weariness and wonder. He had walked for many days along winding paths, and when he descended into the vale, his steps slowed naturally, as though the land itself had persuaded him to let go of urgency. He paused at the edge of the river, where the stones were smooth and round, warmed by sun in the day and cooled by night. He knelt and dipped his hands into the water. It was neither too cold nor too warm, but something perfectly balanced, carrying with it the faint taste of minerals and earth. The river did not rush, but flowed steadily, a rhythm both grounding and hypnotic. As Calen drank, he noticed how the stars reflected on the water's surface, their light rippling into broken patterns, as if the heavens had spilled their jewels into the stream. He lay back upon the grass, the earth cushioning him, and for the first time in many nights, his breathing became slow and even. Somewhere beyond, a soft chime rang out. It was not metallic, but natural, like glass touched by a drifting wind. Calen turned his head slightly, listening. The sound repeated, distant and gentle, as though the valley itself was humming in recognition of his arrival. He did not rise to chase the sound, for the vale encouraged stillness more than pursuit. Instead, he allowed it to drift through him like a dream. The meadow around him seemed alive in a subtle way, the grasses shifting not only with wind, but with their own quiet energy. Fireflies drifted lazily between stalks, their glow steady rather than flashing, small lanterns weaving in patient arcs. They illuminated blossoms of pale blue and lavender that opened only in the night, their petals releasing faint perfumes of mint and honey. Calen breathed it in. The fragrance lingered at the back of his throat, soothing as warm tea. Each inhale carried a different note, sometimes crisp, sometimes sweet, sometimes earthy. It was as if the valley had composed its own symphony of scents to ease the mind into calm. Lulled by the scents and sounds, Calen allowed his thoughts to soften, his memories scattering like leaves in a current. He did not think of the roads he had walked or the burdens he had carried. He thought only of the way the grass bent beneath his back, the way the stars glimmered above him, and the way time seemed to stretch wide and forgiving. The chimes sounded again, closer this time. From the corner of his vision, Calen noticed a faint glow moving along the riverbank, not a firefly, but something larger. It glided above the water's surface like a drifting lantern, leaving trails of light in its wake. It moved without hurry, circling once before coming to rest near a willow's hanging branches. Curiosity stirred gently in Calen, but it was not an urgent pull. Instead, it was a soft invitation, the kind one feels when a page of a book turns itself. Slowly, he sat up, his movements unhurried, and watched the glow as it pulsed faintly. The vale had many secrets, or perhaps only one secret told in countless ways. And now, in the hush of night, it seemed ready to share its first whisper with him. The glow by the willow lingered, shifting gently as though it were breathing. Calen rose to his feet, brushing soft blades of grass from his cloak, and approached with the quiet of someone entering a dream. The air near the light was warmer, filled with a subtle hum that resonated in his chest. As he drew closer, the glow began to take form. It was not a lantern, nor flame, nor spirit as Calen had once imagined from the tales of wandering minstrels. Instead, it was a cluster of floating petals, each one translucent, shedding light like moonstone. They swirled slowly in the air, drifting apart and coming back together again, as though carried by invisible currents. When Calen stopped beneath the willow, the petals turned toward him, aligning in a slow spiral, and in the center of their circle, a single droplet of light formed. It shimmered as though it held both water and flame within it. Without words, the veil spoke to him through this shape, not in language, but in a sensation: welcome, rest, remain. Calen bowed his head slightly, unsure why, but certain it was the right thing to do. The petals pulsed brighter for a moment, then gently floated outward, scattering into the night. The droplet descended toward the river, touching its surface. Ripples of silver spread across the water, catching every star above and magnifying them until the river appeared to be a ribbon of sky itself. Calen felt the breath leave his chest in wonder, but it was not the wonder that startles. It was the kind that soothes, like finding a long-lost melody humming through one's bones. He sat again at the water's edge, letting the glow fade naturally, until all that remained was the willow's gentle sigh and the river's patient song. Time slipped quietly forward. Calen did not count it. Minutes and hours had little meaning here. Eventually, his eyes grew heavy, not from exhaustion, but from the deep calm that pressed upon him like a blanket of dusk. Yet, before sleep could take him, the sound of the chime returned, distant but insistent, drifting further upriver. This time, the veil invited him to follow. Rising slowly, Calen walked along the bank, the grass brushing his ankles and the river always beside him. The fireflies accompanied him in loose clusters, lighting the way as if guiding rather than illuminating. He passed under arching willows, past stones half buried in moss, until he came upon a small bridge of smooth, pale wood. It was delicate yet strong, arched slightly as though it had grown there rather than been built. The railing was carved with spirals that echoed the shapes of shells, and when Calen rested his hand upon it, the wood felt warm, almost alive. He crossed with quiet steps, and at the center of the bridge, he paused. The river beneath him was clear and still, reflecting not only the stars, but something deeper shapes that did not belong to the sky. He saw drifting figures, soft and luminous, as though entire worlds existed beneath the surface. Some appeared as great whales of light, their fins trailing sparkles. Others were schools of tiny shimmering fish that darted in graceful unison. They were not of water nor of air, but of something between, belonging only to the veil. The sight eased him further, filling him with a tranquility so deep he feared it might spill from him like the river's own flow. He lingered, leaning slightly over the railing, his eyes drinking in the dreamscape below. When he finally continued, the bridge carried him into a grove of moon-blooming trees. Their bark glowed faintly silver, and their leaves, pale as glass, shimmered with the slightest movement. At the base of each tree were blossoms shaped like stars, their petals wide open, spilling fragrances of vanilla and rain. The chime rang again, this time so close it seemed to resonate from the trees themselves. Calen followed the sound deeper into the grove until he reached a clearing where a pool of water lay still as polished crystal. Above it, the branches arched into a dome, woven so tightly that only scattered threads of starlight reached through. The pool glowed faintly from within, and upon its surface floated petals similar to the ones he had seen earlier, drifting in slow spirals. The chime sounded once more, and this time Calen realized it was the petals themselves, each releasing a tone as they touched the water, together composing a melody so soft, so deliberate. It seemed woven directly into the rhythm of his heartbeat. He sat at the pool's edge, cross-legged, his reflection wavering beside the petals. He did not question, did not search for meaning. He simply listened, and the song of the vale carried him further into stillness. The melody of the petals lingered in the clearing, each note stretching into the next, until time itself seemed softened, suspended between sound and silence. Calen closed his eyes, and the song wrapped around him like threads of silver, carrying with it the warmth of forgotten memories. He thought of mornings long past, when the world felt simple, when the taste of bread fresh from the fire and the sound of sparrows outside a window had been enough to fill his heart. He thought of quiet laughter, of the feel of sun-warmed stone beneath bare feet. The veil seemed to take these fragments, polishing them gently until they gleamed, then handing them back to him with tenderness. When the music faded, Calen opened his eyes to see the pool still glowing faintly. the petals drifting in new patterns, no longer circular, but flowing outward like rivers branching from a single spring. It was as if the veil was showing him paths yet to come, possibilities stretching beyond sight. He did not feel compelled to choose. The future here was not a demand, but an invitation. And invitations in the veil could be accepted simply by resting. He lay back against the moss that fringed the pool, its softness like down. The canopy above shifted faintly, leaves swaying in a breeze that carried no chill. Through the woven branches, stars peered in broken clusters, like lanterns hung by unseen hands. Calen felt the weight of his limbs grow heavy, his breaths deepening, his heartbeat slowing until it matched the unhurried rhythm of the grove. Yet just as his thoughts drifted toward dreams, the chime returned softer now, like a whisper at the edge of hearing. It was no longer ahead, but all around him, threaded through the air. The pool shimmered in response, its light pulsing gently as though keeping time with the hidden song. From the center of the water, ripples spread outward, though nothing had disturbed its surface. Slowly, something rose, a figure formed of light and mist, neither man nor woman, neither young nor old. Its features shifted like clouds across the moon, yet its presence radiated peace. Calen did not startle. The veil had long since soothed the reflex of fear from him. Instead, he watched as the figure extended a hand, woven from silver threads of light. From its palm drifted another cluster of petals, brighter than those before, each one glowing with a warmth that brushed against Calen's skin. Without speaking, the figure gestured toward the far side of the clearing, where a narrow path wound deeper into the trees. The message was gentle, like a lullaby. Continue, if you wish. Calen bowed his head once more, gratitude flowing through him, and rose to his feet. The figure dissolved like mist under morning sun, leaving only the shimmering petals to fall upon the pool. They joined the others, releasing faint tones as they touched the water, until the melody returned once more. He walked slowly, his steps cushioned by moss, the path lit by fireflies drifting in lazy arcs. The grove stretched endlessly, each tree unique in the shimmer of its bark and the fragrance of its blossoms. Some gave off scents of rose, others of pine, others still of spices he could not name. The variety lulled him deeper, each breath drawing him into calm curiosity. After a time, though time was meaningless here, the trees began to thin. The air grew lighter, carrying with it the scent of rain before it falls. Calen emerged from the grove into a meadow bathed in pale starlight. Here, the grasses were shorter, soft as silk, their tips glowing faintly blue, as though each blade held a drop of moonlight. In the center of the meadow stood a single stone, tall and smooth, etched with spirals that mirrored those on the bridge railing. Around its base bloomed flowers, unlike any he had seen before, blossoms with petals shaped like teardrops, their centers glowing gold. They swayed gently, though no breeze touched them, and with each movement, a faint hum vibrated through the air. Calen approached the stone and placed his hand upon its surface. It was cool, but beneath the coolness, he felt a slow, steady pulse, like a heartbeat deep within the earth. He closed his eyes, and a vision unfurled behind them, not sharp or detailed, but vast and gentle. He saw the entire valley breathing, its rivers, trees, and skis connected in one endless rhythm. The hum of the flowers blended with the sound of the stone, and together they seemed to weave another layer of the Vale's lullaby. Calen felt his chest rise and fall in harmony with it, his breath no longer his own, but part of something greater. He sat at the foot of the stone, leaning back against it, letting the vibration travel through him. Sleep tugged at him again, soft and persuasive, and this time he did not resist. He drifted, not into darkness, but into a dream where the meadow stretched endlessly and the stars above bent low, close enough to touch. When Calen awoke, it was not with the jolt of sudden return, but with the ease of a tide drifting back to shore. The meadow was still, bathed in the silver glow of dawn's first whisper. Though no sun yet touched the sky, the stars had softened, their brilliance muted as though giving way to a gentler light. The stone at his back remained steady and cool, its pulse faint but present, like the heartbeat of a friend who stays near as you sleep. Calen rose slowly, stretching his limbs, and felt no stiffness, no weight of travel. The veil had washed it all from him, as though his very bones had been steeped in rest. He stepped into the meadow once more, and now he noticed subtle paths threading through the luminous grasses. They curved not in straight lines, but in flowing arcs, like the trails of constellations across the sky. Some paths looped back upon themselves, others curved toward the trees, still others led into folds of land where the grasses glowed brighter. There was no hurry to choose. The veil never asked for haste. Calen simply walked, following the path that felt right beneath his feet. The grasses brushed against his legs, humming faintly, each blade adding a note to the silent chorus. The sound was not heard, but felt, as though the air itself was music. Soon, he reached a low hill where the earth swelled gently, and atop it stood a ring of stones, each no taller than his waist. He stepped inside the circle, and at once the hum of the meadow grew stronger. The stones pulsed faintly, glowing in rhythm with the grasses. When Calen placed his hand upon one, warmth spread through his palm and up his arm until it settled in his chest. He felt the calm of the veil deepen, seeping into every corner of him. The air within the circle shimmered faintly, like heat rising from sunlit sand. Through the shimmer, Calen glimpsed fleeting images. A river flowing backward into the stars, a tree whose roots reached into clouds, a lantern drifting on an endless sea. These were not visions to decipher, but simple gifts, fragments of dream offered freely. When the shimmer faded, Calen left the circle, carrying its quiet warmth with him. He descended the hill, and found himself near the river once more, though it seemed wider here, its surface as smooth as glass. The far bank was lined with reeds tipped in silver, swaying as if in greeting. A wooden pier stretched into the water, its planks pale and worn but sturdy. Tied to it was a small boat, carved from a single piece of wood, its bow shaped like a crescent moon. A lantern hung at its front, unlit yet glowing softly from within, as though it carried its own memory of flame. Calen paused at the pier, gazing across the river. Mist curled above the water, veiling the far shore in shifting patterns. It was not an invitation of mystery, but of rest, a promise that wherever the boat carried him, it would be towards stillness. He stepped aboard. The boat rocked gently, then steadied, as if recognizing its passenger. Without oars or sail, it drifted forward, gliding smoothly into the mist. The river's voice was low here, a murmur like someone speaking kindly in another room. The lantern glowed brighter as the mist thickened, its light wrapping Calen in a cocoon of warmth. He leaned back against the curve of the boat, watching the mist swirl and part, forming shapes that dissolved as soon as they were seen. A great bird soaring, a tower of crystal, a hand reaching upward. None lingered, yet all soothed him, like passing thoughts before sleep. The boat carried him deeper into quiet. Time folded, or perhaps unfolded. Calen could not tell. His eyes grew heavy, but each time they closed, the mist shifted and offered new shapes, pulling him gently between waking and dreaming. At last, the mist began to thin. The boat drifted toward a shore lined with soft sand that gleamed like powdered pearl. Beyond it stretched another meadow, though this one was different from the first. Its grasses were taller, swaying in slow waves as though moved by a hidden tide. Scattered among them were lights, not fireflies this time, but small globes that floated a few inches above the ground, pulsing faintly as if breathing. The boat touched shore without a sound. Calen stepped onto the sand, his feet sinking slightly, the grains cool and welcoming. Behind him, the boat remained, as though waiting patiently. He knew without knowing that it would always wait, ready to carry him wherever the Vale next wished him to drift. Ahead, the glowing meadow swayed like an ocean of calm, and Calen felt its pull, not urgent, but steady, like the slow rhythm of waves calling him onward. The meadow before Calen shimmered with its own quiet life, each glowing orb swaying gently above the grass, like stars that had chosen to rest closer to the earth. They pulsed in unison, not perfectly aligned, but in a rhythm that felt natural, like the heartbeat of a sleeping world. Calen stepped forward slowly, and as he entered the meadow, the globes drifted toward him. They did not rush, but floated lazily, circling him in wide arcs before resuming their place above the grasses. Wherever he walked, more globes stirred, as though acknowledging his presence. The grasses themselves brushed against his hands, tall and pliant, their tips glowing faintly blue. When his fingers touched them, they gave off a low hum, like the faint pluck of a stringed instrument. Each note was different, yet all blended seamlessly into the meadow's quiet song. The path ahead was not marked, but Calen felt no need for guidance. He wandered at his own pace, letting the orbs and grasses respond in their subtle ways. Soon, he came to a small rise in the land, and from its crest, he could see the meadow stretch endlessly, swaying and glowing like a vast ocean of stars. He sat there for a while, breathing slowly, allowing his gaze to wander across the horizon. The sight filled him with a serenity so complete that even his thoughts dissolved. There was no past or future here, only the rhythm of the vale, the glow of its light, the hush of its song. As he sat, one of the globes drifted close and hovered before him. It pulsed brighter, and within its glow, faint shapes appeared. Calen leaned closer, watching as the orb revealed tiny images, a tree heavy with blossoms, a river curling through stone, a lantern swaying in the dark. Each vision lasted only a breath before dissolving, yet they carried the weight of meaning, though no words explained them. The orb lingered a moment longer, then floated back into the meadow. Calen felt a warmth in his chest, as though the veil had entrusted him with something, though what that was remained unspoken. He rose and continued walking. The grasses gave way to a clearing where a shallow pond rested, its surface smooth as glass. Unlike the river or the first pool, this water held no glow, no shimmer. Instead, it reflected perfectly, so clearly that it seemed a second sky had been laid flat upon the ground. When Calen knelt at its edge, his reflection gazed back at him, not as he expected, but softened lines of wear smoothed, eyes gentler, as though the veil was showing him not who he was, but who he might be in peace. He dipped his hand into the water, and though ripples spread, the reflection did not break. It lingered steady, as though the image was deeper than the surface. A faint sound stirred behind him, the swish of grasses parting. Calen turned and saw a shape moving through the meadow. At first, it seemed another globe of light, drifting like the rest. But as it drew nearer, it resolved into the form of a creature, gentle and tall, with a body like mist woven into the outline of a deer. Its antlers arched like branches heavy with frost, each point glowing faintly. The creature stopped a short distance away, its gaze calm, unhurried. It lowered its head slightly, as though in greeting. Calen bowed in return, his movement instinctive. The creature stepped closer, each hoof barely bending the grasses, leaving no mark behind. When it reached the edge of the pond, it dipped its muzzle to the water. Ripples spread, and for the first time, Calen's reflection shifted. The softer image merged with the creature's glow, until the pond showed them both as one traveler and guardian, mortal and dream woven together. When the creature lifted its head again, droplets of light clung to its muzzle before drifting upward like fireflies. It lingered for a moment, then turned and moved away, walking back into the glowing meadow. The orbs parted around it, swaying gently as though in reverence. Calen watched until the form dissolved into distance, leaving only the swaying glow. He felt no loss, only calm, as though the encounter had been both greeting and farewell in one. The pond's reflection now held only sky once more, but the memory of that shared image remained with him, steady and luminous inside his chest. He rose, brushed his hands along the glowing grasses, and continued forward, deeper into the meadow. Above him, the stars began to thin, their brilliance softening further, as though dawn was preparing to arrive. Yet, in the vale, dawn did not chase away the night. It blended gently, the way one dream folds into another, leaving the world in perpetual twilight that invited endless rest. The meadow's glow softened as Calen walked, the orbs drifting higher, scattering into the air like embers carried by an unseen wind. Ahead, the grasses gave way to a line of trees that shimmered faintly, their trunks pale as ivory, their leaves the color of dusk. They did not grow in dense ranks, but in patient clusters, each tree standing with quiet dignity, leaving wide spaces of open earth between them. As Calen drew near, he noticed that the air within the forest was cooler, not with chill, but with freshness, like the breath of evening after a long summer day. The scents here were gentler too, faint hints of cedar and rain, blended with the sweetness of distant blossoms. Entering felt less like crossing a boundary, and more like stepping into a memory that had waited patiently for him to arrive. The ground was soft beneath his feet, layered with moss that glowed faintly where he stepped. The glow did not linger, but faded slowly, as if the earth remembered each footprint for a moment before returning to stillness. The trees hummed softly, their branches swaying though no breeze stirred. It was a sound not carried by air, but resonating from the wood itself, a slow vibration like the tone of a deep bell stretched into infinity. Calen placed his hand on the nearest trunk and felt the hum pass into his palm, then into his chest, sinking once more with his own heartbeat. He wandered deeper, his steps unhurried, guided only by the quiet beckoning of the forest. The canopy above let in slivers of star-pale light, scattered into shifting patterns that swayed gently with the leaves. Every so often, a leaf would detach and drift downward, glowing faintly, until it dissolved into the moss before it touched the ground. Soon he came upon a stream winding through the forest. Its waters were clear, but unlike the river or pond, this stream carried with it threads of light, fine and delicate as spun glass. They wove through the current, twisting and turning, breaking apart and rejoining, as though the water itself were weaving dreams. Calen knelt at the stream and trailed his fingers through the threads. They did not resist him, but curled softly around his skin, leaving faint tingles of warmth that lingered even when they slipped away. He followed the stream with his eyes and saw that it led deeper into the forest, winding patiently between the glowing trunks. He walked beside it, listening to the water's murmur. The sound was layered, carrying more than the rush of flow. Faint voices drifted within, not speaking words, but syllables of pure sound, long and melodic, like a chorus sung in a tongue older than memory. The voices did not demand understanding. They asked only that he listen. As he walked, Calen's thoughts grew lighter, thinner, until they seemed to drift away altogether. He no longer wondered where he was going or why. Each step was enough, each breath carrying him further into calm. After a time, he came upon a hollow where the stream widened into a shallow pool. Around it stood a ring of trees closer together, their branches arching overhead to form a natural dome. The water here glowed brighter, its threads gathering until they wove a tapestry of shifting light across the surface. Calen stepped closer, and as he did, the voices within the water grew clearer. They rose and fell like waves, each tone resonating through his chest. He closed his eyes and let the sound pass through him, and for a moment, it was as though the forest itself was breathing him in, holding him gently before exhaling him back into stillness. When he opened his eyes again, he saw small shapes rising from the pool, not creatures, but fragments of light shaped like petals, feathers, and tiny stars. They drifted upward slowly, dissolving into the canopy above, as if returning to the sky. Calen sat at the pool's edge, cross-legged upon the moss, and let his gaze rest on the shifting lights. The voices lulled him, each note flowing into the next with patient rhythm. He could have stayed here forever, wrapped in the hum of the trees and the song of the stream. But the vale was not a place of endings, only of continuations. And so, when the voices softened and the lights faded, Calen rose once more. He placed his hand upon one of the trees, feeling its steady hum, and whispered a wordless thanks. The tree's glow pulsed in reply, slow and deep, as if acknowledging his gratitude. The path led onward, winding past the pool into deeper shadows, where the glow of the trunks grew dimmer, softened by distance. The air there was heavier with quiet, inviting him to step further still into the heart of the forest's dream. The deeper Calen walked into the forest, the quieter the world became. The stream had wandered elsewhere, leaving behind only silence, though it was not an empty silence. It was full, like a held breath, rich with the presence of something unseen yet kind. The trunks here glowed less brightly, their light softened as though wrapped in veils. The canopy above thickened, and the fragments of starlight that filtered through were scattered, pale as dew. The moss beneath his feet grew thicker, cushioning each step until it felt as though he were walking upon clouds. Calen slowed, drawn into the stillness. His own breath sounded louder in this hush, and even that seemed to fall into rhythm with the silence, as though the forest had folded him into its own heartbeat. He began to feel, not with his eyes or ears, but with something deeper, a sense that the veil itself was aware of him, watching not with judgment, but with endless patience. The sensation was not unsettling. It was like being held by unseen hands, cradled in the certainty that here he could not be lost, nor broken, nor hurried. The veil did not demand, it simply waited, its stillness speaking in ways older than words. Calen came upon a small clearing where a single tree stood at the center. It was unlike the others, taller, broader, its bark dark as shadow, though faint streaks of light shimmered through it like veins of silver. Its branches spread wide, heavy with leaves that glowed faintly green, like the last light of dusk clinging to the sky. At the base of the tree lay roots that curved above the ground like the ribs of a sleeping giant. Between them was a hollow filled with water, still and dark, though faintly glowing from below. Calen approached slowly, his steps instinctive, reverent, as though entering a sacred place. He knelt by the hollow and peered into the water. Unlike the other pools and rivers, this surface did not reflect him. Instead, it showed the forest itself, but not as it was. He saw branches moving in great arcs, their leaves swirling like tides. He saw roots stretching endlessly into depths that glowed with hidden light. He saw shapes moving within the earth, not animals, but vast forms like waves of energy, rising and falling in slow rhythm. It struck him then, not as thought, but as certainty. The forest was alive in a way beyond breath and sap. It was dreaming, and he had stepped into its dream. The tree above him groaned softly, though no wind stirred. Its branches shifted, releasing a single leaf. The leaf drifted slowly downward, glowing faintly, until it came to rest upon the hollow of water. The surface rippled, and the vision changed. This time, Calen saw himself walking these paths. He saw his hand upon trunks, his reflection in waters, his shadow mingling with mist. Yet the images were not bound to now. They stretched backward and forward, showing him as he was, as he had been, and as he might become. In each vision, he was not hurried nor burdened. He was always at peace, always resting within the veil's embrace. The leaf sank slowly into the water, vanishing without a trace. The ripples faded. Once more, the pool held only its faint glow, and the forest fell back into silence. Calen sat there for a time, his eyes half closed, his breaths long and even. He felt no need to interpret what he had seen. The veil spoke in ways that were not meant to be solved, only accepted, the way one accepts the sound of rain against a window, or the warmth of a hearth in winter. When he finally rose, he placed his hand upon the dark trunk of the great tree. It thrummed softly beneath his palm, a deep vibration that filled his chest. He bowed his head, whispering thanks once more. The path beyond the tree curved downward, where the shadows deepened, and the glow of moss grew softer. Calen followed it, each step slower than the last, as though the forest itself was teaching him to move with patience beyond patience. The air grew warmer, tinged with the faint scent of lavender, and he felt his eyelids grow heavier, as if the veil was gently coaxing him toward deeper rest. At last, he emerged from the twilight trees into another space, not meadow nor riverbank, but a vast hollow where the earth dipped gently, filled with flowers that opened only under starlight. They swayed in silence, their petals glowing faint blues and purples, a sea of blossoms waiting for him to drift among them. Calen breathed in their fragrance, soft and sweet, and felt sleep press gently at the edges of his mind once more. The hollow stretched wide before Calen, a basin of quiet beauty where the earth had dipped to cradle a sea of flowers. Their glow was soft, their colors muted as twilight itself, pale blues, lavenders, and silvers that shimmered faintly each time the petals swayed. From above, the space must have looked like a pool of starlight caught within the valley. Calen stepped into the hollow, and at once the fragrance deepened. It was gentle, not overwhelming, a mingling of rain-washed stone, honey, and distant herbs. With each breath, it sank into him, calming his body, softening the last tightness in his chest. The air here felt thick with dream, as though every inhalation was a step further from waking. The flowers brushed lightly against his legs as he walked, their petals cool as silk. Some leaned toward him as he passed, as though acknowledging his presence, while others released faint motes of light that drifted upward like tiny stars set free. The motes did not vanish, but lingered in the air, swirling slowly, forming gentle arcs that traced the shapes of constellations. He walked until he reached the center of the hollow, where the blossoms parted to reveal a patch of moss soft as velvet. It was as though the veil had prepared a resting place just for him. Calen lowered himself onto it, leaning back until the earth cradled him once more. The flowers swayed around him, their movement rhythmic, unhurried, as though moved by the steady pulse of the veil itself. As they swayed, their petals brushed one another, and with each touch came a faint tone, high and delicate, like glass bells struck by a feather. One tone joined another, then another, until the hollow was filled with a slow, weaving music. Calen closed his eyes. The sound wrapped around him, neither loud nor soft, but perfect, the kind of song that seemed to exist not outside him, but within, a melody his own body had always known. It carried him downward, deeper, each note loosening the strands of thought that clung to him. He felt the flowers leaning nearer, their glow warming his skin. Their fragrance thickened, sweeter now, tinged with lavender and honey. It did not weigh on him, but lifted him, like a current carrying him further into stillness. Time blurred. He did not know whether he rested for moments or hours. The music of the blossoms folded endlessly, looping upon itself, never repeating yet never straying from calm. Occasionally, a breeze passed through the hollow, though he could not tell if it was air or something subtler, a sigh of the veil itself. Each time it moved, the flowers bowed as one, and their tones deepened, harmonizing until the air was alive with resonance. Calen drifted at the edge of sleep. His body grew weightless, his limbs no longer bound by gravity. He could feel himself dissolving into the hollow, becoming part of its song. Images stirred behind his closed eyes, not sharp, but soft impressions. A meadow of endless waves, a sky filled with lanterns, a sea of petals opening in unison. The blossoms did not let him fall fully into dreams, nor did they wake him. They held him gently in the space between, where waking and sleeping intertwined. In that place, he felt himself expand, not as a traveler bound to one body, but as something larger, a fragment of the veil itself, breathing with its rhythm, glowing with its quiet light. A single blossom brushed his hand. Its petal was cool, yet a warmth flowed into him through the touch. Slowly, he opened his eyes and saw that the flowers nearest him had bent low, encircling him in a living wreath. Their glow was brighter now, not dazzling but protective, a soft shield of light. The tones shifted, weaving into a new melody, slower and deeper, carrying with it the certainty of safety. Calen let out a breath he had not realized he was holding. His body relaxed further, every muscle released, every thought dissolved. Above him, the motes of drifting light gathered into new constellations. They shifted gently, their patterns unfamiliar yet comforting, as though he had seen them once in a dream and forgotten until now. One constellation curved into the shape of a crescent, another into a spiral, another into a circle without end. The flowers swayed, the motes drifted, and Calen lay at the center of it all, held as securely as a child in a cradle. He let his eyes fall closed again, and the veil rocked him into a deeper stillness, where even the edges of himself began to blur into the rhythm of the blossoms. The song of the blossoms lingered as Calen drifted, neither waking nor sleeping. His breaths grew slower, each one a tide, rolling gently in and out. He no longer felt the earth beneath him, nor the weight of his body, only the warmth of the flowers' glow and the cool kiss of the motes of light above. Then, without a sound, the hollow shifted. The constellations of drifting motes grew brighter, their arcs lengthening, until they no longer hovered above, but stretched outward like pathways in the sky. They began to move, swirling slowly, opening into a spiral that rose higher and higher into the starlit night. Calen felt the pull, gentle yet irresistible. He opened his eyes to find that the flowers still encircled him, but their blossoms now faced upward, as if bowing toward the forming spiral. Their tones deepened into a soft drone, a foundation upon which the motes built their shimmering light. Without thinking, Calen stood. His body moved as though carried by the music itself, and when he stepped forward, the ground beneath him no longer felt solid. The moss gave way to light, cool and weightless, holding his steps as though the earth had become air. He lifted his gaze. The spiral of motes widened above, forming a path that rose into the sky. Each step forward carried him higher, and the flowers below receded, their glow becoming a sea of stars beneath his feet. The path was soft, not made of stone or wood, but of light woven into gentle currents. It shifted as he walked, not unsteady, but fluid, like water that always supported him. His footsteps left ripples of pale silver that spread outward, merging seamlessly into the endless glow. Around him, the night deepened. The sky was vast, endless, yet not cold or empty. It was filled with a warmth that seemed to breathe with him, as though the stars themselves exhaled in rhythm to his steps. Some stars were bright, some dim, but all of them flickered with the same calm patience, waiting, guiding, welcoming. The spiral path rose higher still, until Calen could no longer see the hollow of blossoms. Below him stretched a wide expanse of silver mist, glowing faintly, as if the forest itself now slumbered beneath a veil. The sight filled him with awe, but not the sharp awe of waking wonder. It was a softened awe, dreamlike, like recognizing something once forgotten, but deeply familiar. As he climbed, the motes around him began to drift closer, circling him in loose orbits. They whispered faintly, though not in words. Their voices were like sighs, like fragments of songs half remembered, carrying the same tones that the blossoms had sung. Together, they wove a harmony that echoed endlessly across the spiral. One mote, brighter than the rest, drew near to him. It hovered at eye level, pulsing softly in rhythm with his breath. Without hesitation, Calen reached out. The mote settled onto his palm, cool as water, yet alive. For a moment, he felt it sinking into him, flowing upward through his arm until it rested in his chest. There it remained, glowing faintly, steady and calm. Calen did not question it. The mote belonged within him, as though it had always been waiting to return. The spiral stretched onward, endless, yet Calen did not feel weary. His body was light, carried by the current of the path, each step a floating drift. Time unraveled, whether minutes or hours passed, he could not say. At last, the spiral opened into a vast plain of starlight. It was not sky, not earth, but something between, a field of drifting lights that stretched forever, each mote pulsing gently, like a million hearts breathing in unison. The plain swayed beneath him, not unstable, but alive, a great and endless lullaby woven into form. Calen stopped at the edge of the spiral, gazing out over the star plain. The light pulsed in waves, each swell slower and deeper than the last, drawing him into their rhythm. He felt himself dissolving once more, his edges blurring, his thoughts falling away. The veil was no longer only around him. It was within him, above him, beneath him. He was no longer merely walking its paths. He was becoming the dream it dreamed. Calen lingered at the edge of the spiral, gazing into the vast plain of stars. They pulsed in quiet rhythm, their light swelling and ebbing like a tide. The soundless music of the blossoms still lingered in him, now woven seamlessly with the beat of this place, until he could no longer tell if he was hearing or simply being. He stepped forward. The plane held him, not as a solid ground would, but as though he were borne up by a gentle current. Each step sent ripples through the stars, pale arcs spreading outward before dissolving into the endless expanse. Around him, the lights shifted, gathering into faint shapes. At first, they were formless, like drifting clouds, but slowly, as though shy, they revealed patterns. A curve of wings, the arch of a spine, the silhouette of towering figures that seemed carved from light. They were not fixed. With every blink they changed, as though alive in their own way. Calen watched them with calm curiosity. They did not frighten him. The guardians of this place, for that was what they seemed, radiated no sharpness, no demand. They watched as he moved, and their forms bent gently toward him, like great trees bowing in a slow breeze. One drew closer. It was vast, taller than any mountain, yet it moved without weight, its body a constellation bound loosely into the shape of a figure. Where a face might have been, there was only a field of glimmering light. It hovered near, and though it made no sound, Calen felt its greeting. It was not thought nor word, but presence, a calm recognition, as if it had always known him, and he had always known it. The mote he had gathered into his chest stirred in answer, glowing warmer, brighter. The guardian's light pulsed once in response, and then it drifted away, dissolving back into the plain. Calen felt no loss, only the deepening of a bond, invisible but certain, tying him to this place. He walked further, and more shapes stirred. Some took the form of animals he half recognized. A stag of woven stars, its antlers branching into galaxies. A bird whose wings stretched wider than horizons, each feather a cluster of suns. Others were stranger, shifting forms of spiral and arc, patterns that carried meaning he could sense, but not name. All of them moved gently, in silence, guiding his path without leading, simply accompanying. The star plane itself responded to his presence. The ripples of his steps grew broader, their arcs meeting one another, until the whole expanse seemed to breathe with him. His own body had long since surrendered to the rhythm. His thoughts slowed, unspooling until they were no more than drifting motes among the stars. The further he walked, the more he felt himself dissolving into this endless lullaby. His arms and legs grew faint, as though woven into the light itself. He did not resist. The guardians watched, their forms flickering, and he sensed they, too, were part of this gentle unraveling, not beings apart from the veil, but expressions of its dreaming. At length, the ripples of his steps carried him to a place where the light deepened. The stars gathered thickly, glowing brighter, clustering into a pool of brilliance at the heart of the plain. It shimmered like liquid silver, yet it did not flow. It waited, patient, endless. Calen stood at its edge. The mote within his chest pulsed stronger, aligning with the pool. He felt the pull, calm and irresistible, like the steady tug of sleep at the end of a long day. He lowered himself to the ground, though the ground was not ground, but woven light, and sat before the pool. The guardians drifted around him, forming a slow circle, their light bending inward. None pressed closer, but all seemed to bow, their shapes folding in recognition of this moment. Calen gazed into the pool. It reflected no face, no form. Instead, it showed only endless waves of light, slow and gentle, like the sea breathing in and out beneath the moon. As he watched, the rhythm merged with his breath until there was no difference between them. He leaned closer, and the pool shimmered. It did not demand entry. It simply waited. With a long, unhurried breath, Calen lowered his hand into its glow. The light rose to meet him, warm and cool all at once, and he felt himself drifting further and further until the pool was not beneath him, but within him, carrying him toward deeper rest. As Calen's hand touched the silver glow, the pool responded like a breath exhaled across centuries. The light rippled upward, warm and cool at once, curling around his arm and chest, moving like liquid silk. He felt weight vanish entirely, the ground beneath him, the moss of the hollow, the spiral of stars, all faded into a soft, endless light that held him effortlessly. He sank into it slowly, not as if falling, but as if the light itself had carried him, cradled him, inviting him deeper. There was no fear, no hesitation, only calm, as though the veil itself had been waiting to enfold him this way all along. Beneath the surface of light, the world changed. He did not see shapes, nor shadows, nor colors as he had before. Instead, there was a sensation of drifting, a vast, gentle current that moved around him, through him, as if he were both traveler and stream, both observer and flow. The sound of the blossoms, the hum of the forest, the pulse of the star plane, all merged into one soft, unending lullaby. In this place, he no longer felt the boundaries of his own body. Arms, legs, head, chest, all seemed to dissolve into light. The mote that had pulsed within him now glowed as part of a larger rhythm, a heartbeat that carried the veil's song. He understood, without thinking, that this song had always been there, waiting for him to arrive, waiting for him to surrender into it. Around him, currents of silver light began to form shapes. They were subtle spirals, arcs, gentle waves, each one drifting lazily in perfect harmony. Occasionally, a shape would stretch upward, higher than he could perceive, before curving back and flowing along with the rest. It was not movement as he knew it, but a dance without effort, a rhythm without force. Calen felt himself carried along this dance. No path guided him, for he did not need guidance. The veil moved with him, around him, within him. Each current of light brushed gently against his awareness, dissolving the last threads of thought that clung to worry, memory, or expectation. Then faint shapes began to gather more distinctly within the light. Not sharp, not demanding, but familiar. He glimpsed forms of trees bending, rivers flowing, meadows swaying, and the hollow of blossoms. each rendered in delicate currents of luminescence. They were echoes of the vale itself, memories and dreams woven together, not fixed, but alive. A gentle presence appeared nearby, a guardian from the star plane, now flowing through the currents of light. It moved without form, yet Calen sensed its acknowledgement, a quiet companionship. No words were spoken nor needed. The veil itself was speaking through this being. Welcome, rest, remain. He let himself drift closer to the center of the pool, where the light pulsed slower, steadier, like a heartbeat deep and wide. With each pulse, the song of the veil rose and fell, filling every corner of his awareness. There was no beginning or end to the rhythm, only the present, a calm infinity that carried him towards sleep. Time lost its meaning. Minutes or hours, it was impossible to say. Calen did not notice. He did not try to notice. He became the current, the song, the glowing shapes drifting endlessly. His thoughts thinned into motes of light, each one rising gently before dissolving into the greater whole. Above him, currents of silver rose and fell in waves, forming arcs that resembled bridges and spirals, rivers and meadows, stars and blossoms. He moved through them effortlessly, a single strand of consciousness merging with a greater whole. The guardians drifted alongside, not leading, not following, but simply moving with him, keeping pace with the pulse of the veil. As the currents deepened, Calen felt a warmth spreading through him, not heat, but a profound comfort, a gentle acknowledgement of being seen and held. His eyelids, heavy for hours already, closed fully now, and he surrendered completely. In that moment, he understood that sleep in the veil was not darkness, not unconsciousness, but another form of presence, a dream within the dream of light and song, a journey without effort, a place where the soul itself could rest. And so, wrapped in currents of silver, bathed in gentle glow, surrounded by the soft pulse of the veil, Calen drifted deeper into an endless, soothing sleep. Calen's senses shifted within the silver pool, no longer tethered to solid ground or familiar forms. The currents of light carried him forward, dissolving him into a space where shapes flowed freely, and the pulse of the veil became his own heartbeat. His eyelids were closed, yet the world revealed itself in soft impressions. Waves of stars, drifting clouds of faint luminescence, trails of glowing mist twisting like rivers through the quiet sky. The currents guided him slowly, as though walking him through a melody that had no beginning or end. Beneath him, a subtle vibration hummed, like the echo of distant bells, blending seamlessly with the heartbeat of the veil. It was a sound he could feel as much as hear, resonating in his chest, threading through every fiber of his being. Shapes emerged in the light ahead, soft hills made of silver mist, islands of glowing flowers, bridges arched from faint starlight, each forming and reforming as he drifted nearer. They did not seem bound by gravity or time. They simply existed, bending gently with the pulse of the currents. He moved through them without effort. Each step carried him forward along invisible paths, guided not by sight, but by the rhythm of the vale. The air here, if it could be called air, was warm, thick with the gentle fragrance of blossoms and fresh rain. Every breath Calen took seemed to draw him deeper into calm, smoothing the edges of thought, untangling tension from body and mind alike. Around him, clusters of motes swirled lazily, forming patterns that suggested familiar shapes. The hollow of the blossoms, the spiral of stars, the calm riverbank. They shifted and reformed seamlessly, never static, never demanding. Their soft light brushed against him, a tender caress that seemed to say, "You are safe here, rest." Occasionally, a guardian from the starplane would drift past, a shimmering form bending and flowing like liquid light. It left behind faint trails that pulsed briefly, then faded into the currents. These presences were gentle, their attention unobtrusive, simply sharing the space and rhythm of the vale. Calen did not need to look at them to know they were there. He could feel them moving with him, keeping pace with the melody of the pool. He came upon a small cluster of clouds, drifting slowly in the currents of light. They glimmered faintly, translucent, their edges curling like soft smoke. Calen stepped onto one, and it held him as though it were solid, though it felt like nothing more than the gentlest pillow of air. The cloud carried him forward, rising gradually, higher into the luminous expanse. From this vantage, the starplane stretched endlessly, a calm sea of soft, pulsing light. Beneath him, islands of mist and flowers drifted like floating gardens. Above, currents of silver arched in gentle spirals, carrying him onward without urgency. Every movement was effortless, a part of the larger flow. Calen breathed slowly, matching his rhythm to the slow pulses of the vale. Time had no meaning here. Minutes, hours, days, they did not matter. Only the present existed, and it was enough. Every heartbeat, every breath, every pulse of light threaded into a continuous song of calm. Occasionally, he glimpsed forms of animals drifting through the currents. A deer woven of starlight, a bird whose wings trailed silver streams, shapes that were familiar and alien all at once. They moved gracefully, never stopping, never touching him. Yet their presence brought comfort, a silent affirmation that he was not alone in the dream. The currents rose slowly, carrying him toward a faint horizon where light began to blend into a soft golden hue. The first whispers of dawn in this endless twilight. Even this light was gentle, like the brush of a warm hand, never harsh, never bright enough to disturb the calm. Calen felt himself drifting toward it, buoyed by the soft currents, carried along by the song of the vale. The guardians and motes moved with him, maintaining their gentle rhythm, and the entire expanse seemed to exhale slowly, inviting him into deeper rest. He closed his eyes once more, surrendering fully. Here, in this luminous, drifting landscape, he understood that the vale was both a place and a state of being, endless calm, and patient. Every pulse of light, every whisper of sound, every breath of the currents carried him further into the profound comfort of sleep. The soft, golden light stretched across the star plane, bathing everything in a gentle warmth that seemed to seep into Calen's very being. Currents of silver carried him forward, and below him, islands of drifting gardens appeared, each one unique, some blanketed with luminescent flowers, others dotted with small pools that reflected the soft sky above. Streams of light wound between the islands, flowing like liquid crystal, carrying hints of melody that mingled with the song of the vale. Calen stepped lightly onto one of the nearer islands, his feet sinking into soft, glowing moss. The flowers here swayed with their own rhythm, brushing gently against one another and releasing faint notes like tiny chimes. The air carried their perfume, a mingling of jasmine, rain, and sun-warmed stone. And with each breath, Calen felt tension dissolve, as though the veil was drawing every worry from him and dissolving it into the currents of light. He walked slowly, exploring the drifting island. Small glowing orbs flitted among the blossoms, rising and falling like fireflies. They left trails of soft light behind them that lingered for a moment before fading, tracing ephemeral paths that seemed almost sentient, almost alive. When one hovered near him, he reached out, and it brushed his hand like the faintest touch of silk, pulsing warmly before drifting away. A stream of liquid light ran along one side of the island. Its surface shimmered with faint motes, reflections of stars that seemed to live within the water itself. Calen knelt to touch it. The current moved over his fingers like a gentle caress, rippling with a subtle vibration that matched the rhythm of his heartbeat. He could feel the melody of the vale flowing through him, connecting him to the pools, the flowers, the drifting orbs, and the faraway stars. As he rose and continued across the island, more islands drifted into view. Some were smaller, blanketed in soft moss and scattered petals, others larger, with trees whose leaves glimmered with hues of twilight, glowing faintly blue and violet. The currents of light flowed between them, forming natural bridges he could walk upon, each step sending ripples through the glowing paths. From above, motes circled lazily, creating shifting constellations in the air. Calen watched their arcs, feeling the slow, deliberate rhythm of their movements. He realized that the entire vale, the hollow of blossoms, the star plane, these floating gardens, moved as one living, breathing entity. Nothing was forced or abrupt. Everything flowed naturally, perfectly in harmony with the pulse of the dream. Occasionally, he glimpsed guardians drifting among the islands. Their forms were soft, elongated shapes of light and mist, sometimes resembling birds or deer, sometimes abstract, flowing curves of luminescence. They never approached too closely, but their presence was comforting, a reminder that the Vale's dream was aware of him, watching gently, never demanding. Calen came to a particularly large island where streams of liquid light wove into a network of gentle channels. Flowers of every imaginable hue dotted the land, swaying slowly with the rhythm of the vale. Some petals brushed against the streams, releasing faint notes into the flowing melody, adding richness to the endless lullaby. He wandered along one of the channels, letting the current guide him. The water moved beneath his feet like a shallow pool, its touch cool but welcoming. Each ripple sent a vibration through the island, carrying with it the quiet pulse of the vale. Calen felt a profound serenity settle over him, as though every step, every breath, every heartbeat was in perfect alignment with the universe itself. Above, the soft golden light deepened, blending with the silvery glow of the streams and moats, creating a landscape that was at once luminous and serene. There was no rush, no goal, only the gentle, unbroken flow of the vale, carrying him forward, encouraging him to drift deeper into calm. Calen finally found a place to sit on a soft rise overlooking the streams. He leaned back against the moss, eyes closing, letting the light, the streams, the song, and the guardians wash over him. Every pulse, every note, every flicker of the floating orbs wove into him, until he felt entirely part of the vale. Here, in the heart of the floating gardens, he let sleep come fully, not as a release, but as a continuation of the dream, a gentle descent into an infinite, soothing rhythm, where every moment was calm, and every current of light carried him farther into rest. The soft golden light stretched across the starplane, bathing everything in a gentle warmth that seemed to seep into Calen's very being. Currents of silver carried him forward, and below him, islands of drifting gardens appeared, each one unique, some blanketed with luminescent flowers, others dotted with small pools that reflected the soft sky above. Streams of light wound between the islands, flowing like liquid crystal, carrying hints of melody that mingled with the song of the vale. Calen stepped lightly onto one of the nearer islands, his feet sinking into soft, glowing moss. The flowers here swayed with their own rhythm, brushing gently against one another and releasing faint notes like tiny chimes. The air carried their perfume, a mingling of jasmine, rain, and sun-warmed stone, and with each breath, Calen felt tension dissolve, as though the veil was drawing every worry from him and dissolving it into the currents of light. He walked slowly, exploring the drifting island. Small glowing orbs flitted among the blossoms, rising and falling like fireflies. They left trails of soft light behind them that lingered for a moment before fading, tracing ephemeral paths that seemed almost sentient, almost alive. When one hovered near him, he reached out, and it brushed his hand like the faintest touch of silk, pulsing warmly before drifting away. A stream of liquid light ran along one side of the island. Its surface shimmered with faint motes, reflections of stars that seemed to live within the water itself. Calen knelt to touch it. The current moved over his fingers like a gentle caress, rippling with a subtle vibration that matched the rhythm of his heartbeat. He could feel the melody of the vale flowing through him, connecting him to the pools, the flowers, the drifting orbs, and the faraway stars. As he rose and continued across the island, more islands drifted into view. Some were smaller, blanketed in soft moss and scattered petals, others larger, with trees whose leaves glimmered with hues of twilight, glowing faintly blue and violet. The currents of light flowed between them, forming natural bridges he could walk upon, each step sending ripples through the glowing paths. From above, motes circled lazily, creating shifting constellations in the air. Calen watched their arcs, feeling the slow, deliberate rhythm of their movements. He realized that the entire vale, the hollow of blossoms, the star plain, these floating gardens, moved as one living, breathing entity. Nothing was forced or abrupt. Everything flowed naturally, perfectly in harmony with the pulse of the dream. Occasionally, he glimpsed guardians drifting among the islands. Their forms were soft, elongated shapes of light and mist, sometimes resembling birds or deer, sometimes abstract, flowing curves of luminescence. They never approached too closely, but their presence was comforting, a reminder that the Vale's dream was aware of him, watching gently, never demanding. Calen came to a particularly large island where streams of liquid light wove into a network of gentle channels. Flowers of every imaginable hue dotted the land, swaying slowly with the rhythm of the Vale. Some petals brushed against the streams, releasing faint notes into the flowing melody, adding richness to the endless lullaby. He wandered along one of the channels, letting the current guide him. The water moved beneath his feet like a shallow pool, its touch cool but welcoming. Each ripple sent a vibration through the island, carrying with it the quiet pulse of the Vale. Calen felt a profound serenity settle over him, as though every step, every breath, every heartbeat was in perfect alignment with the universe itself. Above, the soft golden light deepened, blending with the silvery glow of the streams and moats, creating a landscape that was at once luminous and serene. There was no rush, no goal, only the gentle, unbroken flow of the Vale, carrying him forward, encouraging him to drift deeper into calm. Calen finally found a place to sit on a soft rise, overlooking the streams. He leaned back against the moss, eyes closing, letting the light, the streams, the song, and the guardians wash over him. Every pulse, every note, every flicker of the floating orbs wove into him, until he felt entirely part of the Vale. Here, in the heart of the floating gardens, he let sleep come fully, not as a release, but as a continuation of the dream, a gentle descent into an infinite, soothing rhythm, where every moment was calm, and every current of light carried him farther into rest. The streams of liquid light guided Calen across the floating islands, winding like veins of silver through fields of glowing moss and blossoms. Each island seemed to hum in harmony with the currents, a soft, unbroken lullaby that vibrated through the soles of his feet and into his chest. With every step, he felt lighter, as though the Vale itself was lifting him, carrying him deeper into its gentle rhythm. He followed the soft curves of a particularly wide stream, its surface glimmering with stars that seemed to drift just beneath the water. The air carried the scent of honeyed flowers and fresh rain, delicate yet persistent, pressing into his senses with quiet insistence. Every inhalation eased the last threads of tension in his body. Every exhalation sent them flowing away, dissolving into the currents that moved beneath and around him. Ahead, the stream split into smaller channels that curved between islands. Calen chose the one that felt most welcoming. Its banks were lined with blossoms that glowed faintly, each petal humming a tone when it touched the current. As he walked, the melody deepened and layered itself into a rich, resonant song, not intrusive, but soothing, a chorus of gentle light and sound. Motes floated lazily overhead, weaving delicate arcs that traced constellations only visible here. Some dipped low to brush his shoulders, leaving soft warmth behind, while others circled the floating islands in patterns that seemed purposeful yet effortless, like dancers moving to music only they could hear. Calen's heart matched their rhythm, slow and steady, expanding and contracting in perfect harmony with the vale. Soon he came to a hidden grove, tucked between two islands where the streams converged. It was smaller than the others, but intensely alive. The flowers glowed brighter here, their petals shimmering in deep blues, soft violets, and pale silvers. The air vibrated faintly with the hum of their blooming, a tone richer and deeper than any he had felt in the vale so far. The grove invited him in. Calen stepped across a small bridge of glowing water and into its center. He paused, noticing that the flowers here were not just swaying with the rhythm of the currents, but responding to his presence. They leaned gently toward him, releasing waves of light that rippled through the air. Every movement was slow, deliberate, and entirely soothing. At the center of the grove lay a shallow pool of luminous water, darker than the streams, but glowing faintly with silvery threads. Its surface was smooth and inviting. Calen knelt beside it, tracing the edges with his fingertips. The water pulsed gently beneath his touch, sending a tremor of warmth up his arms and into his chest. He felt as though the pool were welcoming him, inviting him to rest and merge with the currents that flowed through the vale. He leaned closer, letting his reflection dissolve into the luminous threads. The water responded, rippling into patterns that resembled the floating islands, the streams, the glowing flowers, and the drifting motes. All were intertwined, moving together in an endless, soothing cycle. Calen's breathing slowed even further, his chest rising and falling in perfect sync with the pulse of the vale. Above him, motes gathered, spinning in gentle spirals, their light bathing him in soft warmth. A guardian drifted near, its form fluid and calming, following the patterns of the streams and flowers. It did not speak, did not approach too closely, yet Calen felt its presence as a quiet assurance, a reminder that he was safe and held. He settled on the moss near the pool, leaning back against a soft incline. The hum of the flowers, the currents in the streams, the pulse of the pool, and the gentle motions of the motes wove together into a single lullaby. It carried him onward, deeper into calm, deeper into rest. Calen closed his eyes fully, allowing the veil to cradle him completely. Each ripple of light, each tone of the blossoms, each motion of the guardians became a part of him. His thoughts dissolved entirely, leaving only presence, only rhythm, only the gentle, endless current of the Vale. Here, in the hidden grove, the song of the Vale deepened, weaving its lullaby into his being. It was a melody without beginning or end, carrying him forward into a rest so profound that even the edges of waking life seemed impossibly distant. From the hidden grove, Calen rose slowly, letting the currents of the Vale carry him forward. The floating islands drifted gently beneath his feet, soft as pillows, and the streams of light shimmered around him like flowing silver ribbons. Ahead, he glimpsed the faint sparkle of waterfalls, cascading from one island to another, their waters flowing in slow arcs of liquid light. The sound was soft, more a vibration than a roar, a quiet hum that blended seamlessly with the melodies of the Vale. He stepped closer, and the waterfalls revealed themselves in full. They fell in multiple tiers, each one glowing faintly as the currents rippled beneath the light. The streams from the falls joined the channels winding through the islands, sending waves of luminescence across the mossy banks and floating blossoms. The effect was hypnotic, a slow dance of light and liquid that drew him onward without urging. Calen found a gentle path alongside the falls, stepping carefully over bridges woven of glowing water. The air here was cooler, tinged with the faint scent of mist and blossoms, yet it carried warmth in its embrace. Each step sent soft ripples through the currents, echoing the waterfall's hum and blending into a symphony of calm that filled his chest with soothing vibration. The waterfalls themselves seemed alive, not in the sense of movement alone, but in presence. Each drop of light was like a pulse of the Vale, carrying energy, melody, and quiet intention. As he walked, he dipped his fingers into one of the cascading streams. The water flowed over him like a gentle touch, sending waves of warmth that radiated into his shoulders and chest. His heartbeat slowed in response, syncing perfectly with the rhythm of the flowing lights. Above, the motes of glowing light floated lazily, drifting along the currents created by the falls. Some brushed past his cheeks and hands, leaving faint tingles of warmth. Others rose high, curving and spiraling, forming shifting constellations that seemed to whisper, in the language of the Vale, reassurance and welcome. Calen continued along the path, following the cascade from tier to tier. With each step, he felt lighter, as if the pull of gravity had lessened, and his body had become part of the flowing current. He walked slowly, savoring the sensation of merging with the Vale, letting each ripple, each tone, each flicker of light carry him deeper into the lullaby. At one point, the waterfalls widened into a gentle basin. Here, the waters flowed together in a pool of silver light, its surface smooth and reflective. Calen knelt at its edge, resting his palms on the glowing surface. The pool pulsed softly beneath his touch, and he felt the currents move through him, a river of calm that washed away the last threads of thought, tension, and concern. Around the basin, flowers leaned toward the water, their petals glowing faintly in the reflection of the waterfalls. The blossoms hum intertwined with the song of the flowing water, creating layers of melody that wrapped around Calen like a soft, endless cloak. Even the moats contributed to the harmony, their arcs above forming gentle spirals that seemed choreographed to the rhythm of the vale itself. He lay back on the mossy bank near the pool, allowing his body to melt into the soft surface. The waterfalls hum, the stream's current, the blossoms' tones, and the dancing motes wove together seamlessly, a symphony of infinite calm. Calen felt as though he had become part of the music itself, each pulse of light and vibration of sound flowing through him, carrying him gently deeper into rest. His eyelids grew heavy, and he closed them fully, surrendering entirely to the rhythm. The veil wrapped around him in waves of gentle luminescence and soft, vibrating tones. He felt every tension dissolve, every thought fade, until there was only presence, only the serene, endless current of the waterfalls, the streams, the floating gardens, and the drifting moats. Here, in the basin beneath cascading lights, Calen drifted fully into sleep. The vale's song carried him onward, deeper and slower, enveloping him completely in the infinite lullaby of its dream. From the hidden grove, Calen rose slowly, letting the currents of the vale carry him forward. The floating islands drifted gently beneath his feet, soft as pillows, and the streams of light shimmered around him like flowing silver ribbons. Ahead, he glimpsed the faint sparkle of waterfalls, cascading from one island to another, their waters flowing in slow arcs of liquid light. The sound was soft, more a vibration than a roar, a quiet hum that blended seamlessly with the melodies of the vale. He stepped closer, and the waterfalls revealed themselves in full. They fell in multiple tiers, each one glowing faintly as the currents rippled beneath the light. The streams from the falls joined the channels winding through the islands, sending waves of luminescence across the mossy banks and floating blossoms. The effect was hypnotic, a slow dance of light and liquid that drew him onward without urging. Calen found a gentle path alongside the falls, stepping carefully over bridges woven of glowing water. The air here was cooler, tinged with the faint scent of mist and blossoms, yet it carried warmth in its embrace. Each step sent soft ripples through the currents, echoing the waterfall's hum and blending into a symphony of calm that filled his chest with soothing vibration. The waterfalls themselves seemed alive, not in the sense of movement alone, but in presence. Each drop of light was like a pulse of the vale, carrying energy, melody, and quiet intention. As he walked, he dipped his fingers into one of the cascading streams. The water flowed over him like a gentle touch, sending waves of warmth that radiated into his shoulders and chest. His heartbeat slowed in response, syncing perfectly with the rhythm of the flowing lights. Above, the motes of glowing light floated lazily, drifting along the currents created by the falls. Some brushed past his cheeks and hands, leaving faint tingles of warmth. Others rose high, curving and spiraling, forming shifting constellations that seemed to whisper, in the language of the Vale, reassurance and welcome. Calen continued along the path, following the cascade from tier to tier. With each step, he felt lighter, as if the pull of gravity had lessened, and his body had become part of the flowing current. He walked slowly, savoring the sensation of merging with the Vale, letting each ripple, each tone, each flicker of light carry him deeper into the lullaby. At one point, the waterfalls widened into a gentle basin. Here, the waters flowed together in a pool of silver light, its surface smooth and reflective. Calen knelt at its edge, resting his palms on the glowing surface. The pool pulsed softly beneath his touch, and he felt the currents move through him, a river of calm that washed away the last threads of thought, tension, and concern. Around the basin, flowers leaned toward the water, their petals glowing faintly in the reflection of the waterfalls. The blossoms hum intertwined with the song of the flowing water, creating layers of melody that wrapped around Calen like a soft, endless cloak. Even the motes contributed to the harmony, their arcs above forming gentle spirals that seemed choreographed to the rhythm of the Vale itself. He lay back on the mossy bank near the pool, allowing his body to melt into the soft surface. The waterfalls hum, the stream's current, the blossoms' tones, and the dancing motes wove together seamlessly, a symphony of infinite calm. Calen felt as though he had become part of the music itself, each pulse of light and vibration of sound flowing through him, carrying him gently deeper into rest. His eyelids grew heavy, and he closed them fully, surrendering entirely to the rhythm. The Vale wrapped around him in waves of gentle luminescence and soft, vibrating tones. He felt every tension dissolve, every thought fade, until there was only presence, only the serene, endless current of the waterfalls, the streams, the floating gardens, and the drifting motes. Here, in the basin beneath cascading lights, Calen drifted fully into sleep. The Vale's song carried him onward, deeper and slower, enveloping him completely in the infinite lullaby of its dream. Calen awoke, or rather, shifted into a new part of the Vale, carried effortlessly by the gentle currents that flowed from the luminous basin beneath the waterfalls. He was no longer walking upon moss or water. Now, he floated along streams of light that meandered between islands, drifting higher into an area bathed in a soft twilight glow. Above, the sky was neither night nor day, but a tranquil blend of deep indigo and pale lavender, the color of distant dreams. The trees lining the stream were unlike any he had seen before. Their trunks were smooth and dark, yet their leaves shimmered with muted tones of amethyst, indigo, and silver. Each leaf vibrated faintly, producing a low hum that resonated through the currents of light, harmonizing with the gentle song of the Vale. As Calen drifted closer, He noticed that the hum was not constant. It pulsed with rhythm, like breathing, drawing him deeper into the forest's quiet embrace. The streams curved gracefully through the trees, carrying him along without effort. Every motion of the currents was soft, slow, deliberate, as if time itself had eased here. Calen felt the rhythm seep into him. His chest expanded and contracted with each pulse, his thoughts unspooling until they were mere threads, floating lightly through the currents of the vale. Above him, motes of luminescence moved in lazy arcs, brushing past his face and shoulders. They left trails of light that lingered for moments, dissolving slowly into the surrounding glow. Some clustered near the branches, mimicking the hum of the leaves with faint pulses of their own. The effect was subtle, soothing, like a whispered lullaby that required no words, only presence. Calen drifted past groves of trees, whose trunks curved gently toward the streams, their roots hovering above the currents like arches of liquid silver. The ground below was hidden, yet he did not feel unease. The currents themselves supported him, and the gentle pull of the forest seemed to assure him that he could go anywhere without fear or effort. Here and there, small clusters of blossoms grew at the base of the floating roots. Their petals glimmered faintly, releasing tones in response to the movement of the streams. Each note was soft, long, and resonant, adding depth to the forest's melody. Occasionally, a petal would drift upward, floating slowly toward the sky before dissolving into light. A guardian appeared in the distance, hovering along one of the larger streams. Its form was fluid, shifting between shapes that suggested both bird and serpent, yet it radiated only calm and patience. It moved alongside Calen without approaching too closely. Its presence, a subtle reassurance, a gentle acknowledgement of his journey through the vale. The streams began to widen slightly, forming shallow pools between the tree trunks. Calen allowed himself to drift into one, letting its soft, glowing waters envelop him. The hum of the trees and the melody of the blossoms intertwined seamlessly here, vibrating through him, carrying away the last remnants of lingering thought or tension. The sensation was like being held in the arms of the forest itself, rocked by invisible hands, every pulse and note urging him toward a deeper, more profound calm. Above, the twilight sky shifted slightly, soft gold and lavender threads weaving through the indigo. The motes danced along these threads, forming arcs and spirals that moved in harmony with the hum of the trees. Calen watched, letting his attention follow the gentle motions, each one another layer of the vale's lullaby pressing into his senses, drawing him farther from waking and farther into the serene heart of sleep. He leaned back in the shallow stream, closing his eyes fully. The forest hummed, the streams pulsed, the motes glimmered, and the guardians floated nearby. Calen felt himself dissolve further into the currents of the vale. Each note, each vibration, each arc of light carrying him deeper into infinite rest. Here, in this twilight-hued forest, suspended along the flowing streams of light, he drifted completely into the dream of the Vale, weightless, calm, and endlessly held. Calen drifted deeper into the twilight forest, carried effortlessly by the gentle currents of the luminous streams. Each step, or rather, each movement through the flowing light, felt like a slow inhalation of the Vale itself, drawing him further into calm and quiet. The trees leaned gracefully above him, their leaves swaying in a rhythm that matched the soft pulses of the currents. The forest had changed subtly. Small, bioluminescent creatures flitted among the branches and across the streams. They glowed in soft shades of aquamarine, lavender, and gold, their movements unhurried, almost dancing with the music of the forest. When one hovered close, brushing past his shoulder, Calen felt only warmth and serenity, as though the creatures were passing along fragments of the Vale's lullaby directly into him. Below, the streams widened slightly, revealing gentle ripples of light that carried the reflection of the forest above. Floating flowers lined the banks, their petals glowing faintly, shifting tones, as if responding to the passage of the currents. When Calen brushed his hand through the water, the blossoms stirred softly, sending waves of gentle notes pulsing through the stream. The sounds were subtle, layered, perfect in their stillness. The guardians of the Vale appeared intermittently among the trees, their forms fluid and luminous. One took the shape of a deer, its antlers trailing arcs of starlight that mingled with the soft glow of the flowers. Another resembled a bird, each beat of its wings sending ripples of silver light across the water. They moved without urgency, never intruding, yet their presence brought a deep sense of reassurance, a quiet acknowledgement of Calen's journey and his growing union with the Vale. Calen followed the widening stream, allowing the currents to carry him into a small clearing. Here, the forest opened slightly, revealing clusters of glowing flowers that leaned toward one another, forming natural arches. Their hum was deeper here, richer, harmonizing with the twinkling tones of the motes that spiraled above. Each arch seemed to beckon him forward, a gentle invitation to wander further into the heart of the Vale. As he moved beneath one of these arches, a faint mist rose from the glowing moss beneath his feet. It was warm, fragrant, with soft notes of lavender and honey, and it curled around him like a comforting shawl. The motes drifted through the mist, leaving trails of light that lingered for moments before dissolving. Calen's breaths synchronized with the rhythm of the mist and light, each inhale bringing serenity, each exhale releasing any remaining tension. In the center of the clearing, a shallow pool glimmered softly. Its surface was still, reflecting the gentle glow of the flowers and the twilight-hued sky above. Calen knelt beside it, touching the water lightly. The pool pulsed beneath his fingertips, a slow, even rhythm that matched the hum of the forest and the heartbeat of the Vale itself. He felt warmth radiate from the pool, traveling up his arms and into his chest, carrying with it a sensation of perfect calm. He leaned back on the soft moss nearby, letting the currents of light carry him slightly above the ground. The forest seemed to breathe around him, swaying gently in unison with the streams and pools. Every hum, every ripple, every flicker of light and motion wove together, forming a seamless lullaby that wrapped around him like a blanket of pure serenity. Above, the motes and bioluminescent creatures continued their slow dance, drifting through arcs and spirals that shifted effortlessly with the pulsing hum of the forest. Guardians watched silently from a distance, their forms blending with the soft glow of the trees, moving in gentle, predictable rhythms that reinforced the tranquility of the vale. Calen closed his eyes fully, feeling himself dissolve further into the currents of light and song. His thoughts thinned completely, replaced by the serene awareness of presence, a floating consciousness woven seamlessly into the rhythm of the vale. Each pulse, each hum, each flicker of motion carried him deeper into dream, until the edges of his waking self were gone, leaving only the calm, endless flow of light, sound, and gentle motion. Here, in this twilight-hued forest, surrounded by bioluminescent creatures, glowing flowers, and drifting guardians, Calen surrendered fully to the lullaby of the vale, drifting endlessly in profound serenity. The currents of silver light guided Calen ever deeper into the twilight forest, past mossy banks, drifting blossoms, and streams that shimmered with infinite quiet. The hum of the forest pulsed gently beneath him, the bioluminescent creatures weaving arcs of light above and around him, and the guardians glided silently, their luminous forms bending gracefully with the rhythm of the vale. Ahead, the trees grew taller, their trunks smooth and dark, yet their canopies glowed softly, each leaf a lantern of muted gold, lavender, and silver. The leaves quivered in time with the song of the vale, each producing a faint note that blended into the perfect lullaby of the forest. As Calen drifted closer, he realized that these were lantern trees, each one alive with its own gentle pulse, its own calm melody. He floated beneath the trees, feeling the warmth of their light brush across his face, arms, and chest. Each note harmonized with the stream beneath him, the hum of the flowers, and the quiet arcs of motes above, creating a multi-layered symphony of serenity. It was a song that had no beginning or end, only a slow, unbroken rhythm that carried him effortlessly forward. Calen drifted to the center of a grove where the lantern trees clustered densely. Their combined light created a soft canopy, bathing him in gentle hues of gold and lavender. The air was fragrant with the mingling scents of blossoms, mist, and the faint sweetness of honeyed light. He leaned back against the soft moss that blanketed the forest floor, letting the currents lift him slightly, weightless, cradled completely by the vale. Above him, motes spiraled slowly, tracing delicate patterns that mirrored the arches of the trees, the curves of the streams, and the gentle flow of the waterfalls from earlier islands. Each movement was deliberate, yet effortless, each flicker of light a part of the lullaby that enveloped every sense. Calen's breathing slowed to match the rhythm, each inhale drawing in serenity, each exhale releasing the last threads of wakefulness and tension. A guardian drifted near, its form like liquid starlight, flowing seamlessly into the rhythm of the grove. It hovered close without intruding, radiating calm reassurance. Calen felt its presence as a quiet acknowledgement, a final note in the symphony of the Vale, a promise that he was safe, held, and at peace. He closed his eyes fully, letting the currents of the lantern grove carry him further. The pools, streams, waterfalls, moats, blossoms, and glowing trees all merged into one seamless experience of light, sound, and motion. Time no longer existed. There was no beginning or end, only the infinite, gentle pulse of the Vale cradling him, wrapping him in its soft, unbroken lullaby. Calen felt himself dissolve further into the currents, merging completely with the light, the sound, and the hum of the forest. The song of the Vale flowed through him and around him, a tide of serenity that carried every last fragment of thought, worry, and fatigue far away. He was weightless, safe, and endlessly held, a single note in a vast, harmonious symphony that extended through the glowing islands, the flowing streams, and the endless twilight of the dream. The lantern trees swayed gently, their notes blending perfectly with the hum of the streams and the soft pulse of the moats above. The guardians moved gracefully among them, a quiet presence ensuring the continuity of the serene rhythm. Every detail of the Vale was perfectly attuned to calm, to rest, to sleep, guiding Calen deeper and deeper into a state of absolute relaxation. As he drifted among the currents of light, he realized that this place was not only around him, but within him. He carried the Vale in every pulse, every breath, every flicker of awareness. Its lullaby was now a part of him, an endless current of serenity he could return to at any time. And so, in the soft glow of the lantern grove, Calen surrendered completely. The streams, the flowers, the moats, the guardians, and the flowing light cradled him. The lullaby of the Vale carried him into infinite, perfect rest. There was no more wandering, no more seeking, only calm, only light, only the unbroken song of the Vale. Calen drifted into sleep, deeper than he had ever known, and the Whispering Vale sang quietly, endlessly, holding him in its gentle embrace for all time.